Hello, so this evening we're going to take a look at the FlyByWire A320 in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So this plane's been out for a while, but I'm also aware I've not flown it for a very long time, so I thought it was about time this evening that we got into it, went and had a look, and just refreshed ourselves really. So I will make mistakes because I'm just not familiar with it anymore. But it's going to be good fun and we'll see how we do. So let's just go and have a quick look at Navigraph at what we're going to do. We're taking off from Bristol in the southwest of the UK. We're going to fly a standard instrument departure, then fly across the country, and then come back in via quite a tortuous approach route into Luton Airport. I just spotted this earlier this evening and I thought, oh, I've got to have a go at that. So we'll see how the airplane gets on with following this specific route. Okay, so let's go and get inside the airplane and see if we can remember about getting things started up. I am going to follow the checklist I wrote up a very long time ago, so it'll be interesting to see if it still applies correctly to the airplane, so we might have to make some revisions along the way. So, overhead we go and turn the batteries on to begin with in the Airbus, and we also turn on the external power if it's available, and it is available. So then we go and turn the strobes to auto, nav and logo lights to 2. And then the APU master switch goes to on, then the start switch goes to on for the APU. And we can go and turn the oxygen for the crew on. Turn the emergency exit lights to armed. No smoking signs to auto. We can align the ADIRS system, all 3 systems go to nav, and they'll take a little while for that to also happen. And then we can go down into the cockpit, brighten up all the screens. So we're just brightening up the co-pilot screens on that side. We'll brighten up the engineering screens in the middle. We'll brighten up the MCDU screens. We'll also brighten up the numbers on the MCP. What is what is it called? FMGC is what it's called in the Airbus, isn't it? Okay, so that's the lights done. So then we go down Control 5 and we're going to go and program the route into the MCDU. So we are going to clear the message there, go to the FMGC section. GPS is on primary, which is fine. No messages, no alerts on here, so it's just showing us the database versions. So we go to init to program our flight in. We're going to do this by hand, we're not going to use SimBrief. So EGGW is our, I'll just double check this, look at the flight, EGGD, sorry. So Echo Golf Golf Delta. Echo Golf Golf Delta is our departure airport, and then Echo Golf Golf Whiskey is our destination. So that's from Bristol to Luton. So we drop that in from and to, and return. And then we go to IRS initialization. I'm not sure if this is implemented in the same way in this aircraft. No, it isn't. It doesn't disappear or anything. Anyway, so we'll put 100 in the cost index. We're just making this up with some sensible data. We'll fly at flight level 250 or 25,000 feet. Go to the next page. We can automatically calculate the zero fuel weight just by clicking on it, and it fills it in for us. We can put our block fuel in, which is on the screen up here, so 3.8. Don't need much fuel for this journey anyway. So there we go, all done. And then we can go into performance data. We can put our flap settings in, and that will then allow us to calculate V-speeds. We can put the transition altitude in, which is 6,000 feet. We don't need to do flex to temp. The flex to temp is to do with derating the engines, and we don't need to do that. So we're going to leave it alone. I'm not going to get into that discussion of what it actually means. Partly because I don't know enough to talk honestly about it, or informatively about it, but partly because it's a huge subject. Okay, so what we're going to do, we'll use Navigraph to do this. On the MCDU here, it's asking on approach what the QNH at the destination is. So it's only a short flight, so there's no harm in looking this up. So I'm going to open the airport, and we've got a QNH of, where is it? It's 1019, but where's that down here? Oh, there it is. 1019 hectopascals. Temperature at the destination is 11 degrees Celsius, so drop that in there. We don't need to worry too much about winds. It's not a very windy day anyway. So we're not doing this absolutely by the numbers. There's probably people that are horrified watching this that I'm not putting all of the data in. We're not really going to concern ourselves. We're really just having a basic look around the aeroplane functionally. We're not following real world procedures to the nth degree. Okay, so we want to go and set up our departure and arrival. So we go to the flight plan page, we can select EGGD and say departure, and we're going to take off runway 27, and we're going to use the, let's have a quick look. So go back to the flight page with what we've chosen. We're going to do the BCN1X departure, so there it is, and insert that. Then back on the legs page, we select the bottom line, which is always the destination. And we do the arrival. Normally you wouldn't do this until you're in flight, because obviously plans change. We're going to be doing the Silv 1N arrival, ILS runway 25 on the Zagit. So ILS 25, and then scroll through the options. Gone too far. Silv 1N, and we're going to do the Zagzo. Okay, so then we can insert that, and we can have a quick flick through, and we should see, yeah, it's got the GWN numbers are appearing, which I spotted in here. So that's all looking good. Okay, you can just press flight plan again to go to the top. You don't have to scroll through. So flight is programmed. We set flaps to 1 in the aircraft, although it won't. Will it actually do this without the engines running? Have we got hydraulics yet? We won't have, will we? No, so we won't touch the flaps lever just yet. Doing things out of step, leaving the leaving the procedure behind, which is always a bad idea. Okay, MCP Control 2, the master control panel for the autopilot. So we're going to press B to calibrate the altimeter, and that's going to set it to the local QNH, which is good. We are going to leave all this on managed mode, and we're going to set our target altitude immediately for our cruise, because it'll follow VNAV instruction anyway, because it knows about the transition altitude and everything else. It's all good. It knows about 10,000 feet for the speed as well in the Airbus. So everything should be good. Just looking through, making sure I haven't missed anything obvious. So Control 8, go back overhead, turn the seatbelts to on. External power can come off now because the APU will be up and running. And we can perform pushback at this point. So if we go and have a look inside the aircraft, switch the tablet on, we can do pushback from inside the tablet in the FlyByWire A320, I seem to remember. So we're going to go and, actually, should we go and put this into SimBrief just so we can fill this up? I'll show you how to do it the quick way. So we'll copy the line from Navigraph. You can do the same trick in Little Nav Map if you go to Flight Plan and copy it to the clipboard. So we're going to go to SimBrief. And we're already logged in as me, so go to the dispatch system and we do a new flight. We'll say we are virtual flight online, so VFL, flight number 123, departing from, where are we going from? EGGD, so EGGD to EGGW. Aircraft type is a Boeing 7, sorry, not a Boeing, an Airbus A320, so A320N is the exact model we're flying. And we are going to do cost index 100, and we are not going to worry too much about the cost index or anything. We are going to go though and set what am I looking at here? So yeah, altitude, we're going to go for 25,000 feet. And we're going to paste in our route in here, but we're going to chop the ends off it, so you only want the SID and the start on it, yeah? So let's see if it understands that much of it. Analyze route. BCN1X is invalid for 09. So let's put the whole thing back in and see if it understands the whole thing. Analyze route. So it's saying up here that it doesn't match. Okay, so do you want to select yes? Route is valid. Okay, so then we can just go up and generate flight. So we've got this slightly crazy route going on. The only reason we're doing this is so then you can see in here, sorry, in the aircraft, if we import the SimBrief data now, there we go. So it's showing us the data about our flight, and we can obviously go and look in the operational flight plan now if we wish to, and read it to keep ourselves busy en route, which obviously we're not going to. I am going to do a video at some point in the future looking through the operational flight plan, looking at where you get all the bits of data from to fill it into the aircraft to do it properly. So we're not going to do that today though. So it's quite nice in here, you get an overview as well, which is quite cool. Anyway, let's go and make sure everything is looking good. We can remove the safety cones out of the way. I think it does it automatically actually if we do a pushback. So if we turn the pushback system on, it warns us if we've got better pushback not to use it. So we put the pushback system on, we'll call the tug, we're waiting for saying tug is attached already. So we'll take the parking brake off, we will push the aeroplane backwards, and then while pushback is happening we can get on with starting the engines. So we come overhead and we turn the beacon light to on, we turn the fuel pumps on,
flight attendants, arm doors and cross check.
We turn the APU bleed to on. So this is the compressed air that will spin up the engines. We turn the ignition mode of the engines to start mode. So that's the little knob down here, but I'm going to do it on my controller because I've got the controls to do it. And we start engine number 2. So I'll just flick this switch forwards. And if we look down here, you'll see the N2 coming up for engine number 2.
Once again, we'd like to welcome you on board. Your safety is our top.
Okay, so how are we doing on this pushback? We're deliberately going slowly because we want all the time in the world to do this. So then we're going to make the aeroplane turn, the tail go left, relative to us looking from the cockpit. So you can see an illustration of this happening. So we can go a tighter turn if we want. So if we zoom in, you can see the turn that's happening. So how are we doing on the engine start? N1 is coming up. Exhaust gas temperature is rising. Trying to do several things at once. This is why aircraft have 2 pilots and a crew on the ground that have been given a plan for the pushback and they just get on with it. So we're doing 3 jobs at once. Okay, so we're going to stop the pushback there. And we are going to put the parking brake back on, and then we are going to detach the tug. So we're waiting for the tug, sorry, and then we can start engine number 1 now. So we'll wait for that to happen. Turn the system off again, and we should be good to go. So we're just going to wait for the engine to come up. I think you can taxi with 1 engine fine, but we're going to wait and just be safe about that. So we'll move the flaps to 1 now, so flaps are in transit. It's showing down here predictive wind shear is switched off, so we will go and turn the predictive wind shear to on. We'll also wait for the cabin crew to stop talking, and then we'll turn TCAS on because I think that triggers another annunciation through the cockpit, which is quite interesting. I think they finished. So I think, if memory serves, when we turn TCASTer on and go to TA, or maybe it's arming this ground spoilers that does it, I can't remember.
Flight please prepare for takeoff.
Maybe it does. Okay, so engine's coming up. So once the engine's up and running, we can turn the ignition system back off. And we are pretty good to go to taxi out. So we'll put the taxi light on the nose on. And come off the parking brake. Ease the throttles forwards. There is a small amount of positive thrust at rest in the Airbus. So we've only got a small zigzag here to do and we'll be on the runway before we know it. Just checking things as well. So now the engines are running while we're obviously on our way out to the runway. We can go and turn off the APU bleed and turn off the APU. Crossfeed happens automatically on the Airbus. You don't have to crossfeed over to the main engines as you do in a Boeing. Well, sorry, it happens automatically in an A320, not in all Airbuses. So we've done the APU, we've set the flaps to take off, we've armed the ground spoilers, we've released the parking brake, we've done the nose light. Let's just slow down. I'm trying to do two things at once again. So let's get straightened up on the runway and just go through the final few checks just to make sure we've done everything we kind of should have done. So stop the aircraft moving, parking brake back on. So yeah, nose light is set to taxi. I'm going to go and switch on the landing lights now. Strobes go to on. Okay. So we keep an eye on the airspeed ribbon as we accelerate down the runway, so smoothly pushing the throttles forwards to full throttle. So toga. So we're looking for rotate, and here it goes. So rotate, typically people say 3 degrees a second, so gear can come up. Just make sure that has worked, and it has. So we put the throttles into the climb descent now. Autopilot can come on. And the aircraft is looking after itself now. So we're going to leave the flaps down for the moment. If we go and have a look, we've got landing lights on still, ground spoilers are still armed, so they can be disarmed again now. Seat belts are on. Not sure why the engine PSI is flashing. That's an interesting one. So if we have a look on the screen down here, so on the flight plan page, we can see we have to be at... Interesting, this is not following the plan very accurately. So it should have stopped climbing for 6,000 feet and it didn't. I wonder why. I said mistakes would be made, so it's descending back down. It's almost like the armed altitude hadn't happened. I'm not entirely sure why that was. So it's correcting itself now, which is good. We've gone for 250 knots now, obviously, because we're below 10,000 feet. We are above the transition altitude, though. which was 6,000 feet. So we can go to standard. Does that synchronize both sides? Yes, it does. So we're good with that. So flaps can come up. And it's going out to 250 knots now, obviously because of the configuration allows it. So I was a bit late raising the flaps there, but it's a good example actually that the aircraft won't let itself overspeed the flaps. Okay, so we can come back to the flight page. I think this fills in as you fly the route, I'm not sure, we'll see. Now we have missed a waypoint out of our plan, haven't we? We were going to go to UBCAM, which should be after BCN, so let's go and insert it while we're en route. So after BCN we want UBCAM. U-B-C-A-M. So I'll put it in on top of silver, and there we go, it's just neatly done it. Don't even have to execute it on the Airbus, it just did it. Very good. So let's increase the range. So you can see there's the Brecon VOR. We've got a fair bit of mist going on today, which is interesting, otherwise we'd have had nice views of Wales. Unfortunately not. Not going to be happening today. So we're 15 miles from Brecon. So we're going to show you that on the map so you can get some idea. We've just crossed the Bristol Channel. So Bristol Channel turns into the River Severn and goes up through Gloucester. Yeah. Okay, so we're flying out over the Brecon beacons, but unfortunately we can't really see anything, which is a shame. It's a bit misty. Otherwise we get lovely rolling hills to go look at. Okay, so it's holding 6,000 feet, and the reason for that, if we look at the departure, is it wants us at 6,000, look, until we get to Brecon, and then we get free, you know, vectors basically, so we can climb to our cruise altitude. There is a chance here that we may not be able to climb fast enough, so let's go and have a look at the approach route, see if there's any restrictions on it. So we need to be back down to flight level 150 by Woburn, so it's going to be pretty much a sprint to 25,000 feet and then fall back down to 15,000 feet. We'll see if the aeroplane can do it. We might have to intervene. Might have to curtail it at 18,000 feet on the climb. Okay, so we've got about 7 or 8 miles to go to Brecon. We can check that down here actually. So Brecon, it's giving us the bearings. There's no speed limits, that's because we haven't programmed anything. We need to be back down to 250 knots for Woburn though. Okay, 5 miles to go to Brecon, and then the aeroplane will get on with it. Should we have a look outside? Yeah, it's such a shame we're not seeing these hills, because they are quite spectacular. It's low-hanging mist. Worth pointing out, I've modified the time so we could see what we were illustrating along the way. It's actually dark at the time of, it's actually, you know, completely pitch dark at the time of recording, so let's leave it on evening, which will make it a bit more atmospheric, I guess. Should we put some lights on around the cockpit as well? Dome lights overhead, isn't it? So if we press Control and 8, is it, to get up here, and then Control and 9. Just looking around it, I think some of these systems aren't fully modelled in the fly-by-wire, some of them are. I'm just getting a bit distracted here looking at other bits and pieces. You can hear the aircraft is accelerating, by the way, so it's getting ready to climb now. So there's the dome light control, which might be all we need to see what we're doing. So obviously the dome light, you can go bright on it as well. So we go TAR8 on the TCAS once we're in flight. Again, I'm late on that. That's me not following procedures again. Let's go bright on the dome. We should have it lit up like daytime in the cockpit, which is quite nice. So you can see what's going on. This is a bit bright. We can turn this down. Okay, so we're going out towards UBCAM. We're up to 11,000 feet already. So the aircraft has automatically pulled away the 250 knot restriction. This is a bit bright, isn't it now? It's a job to see the numbers on it. So we'll bring it down a touch. Same goes for the other side. Let's just tone that down so we can actually see it. So we're racing up towards 25,000 feet. So shortly after takeoff, I didn't actually show you this, I moved the throttles to the climb detent, which allows the aircraft to take over with auto throttles. So in the Airbus, the throttles don't move. They are literally a switch. So when they're in the climb detent, the managed speed mode can manipulate the throttles itself, and it gets full control over the thrust. So you can see at the moment in this climb, it's actually running the gas turbines at 102%, and the turbofans are running 87%. So landing lights, now we're above 10,000 feet, which we were quite some time ago. The landing lights should have come off. And the taxi light should have been off as well. Again, this is one of those problems of talking, doing, flying, operating, trying to do it all at once, and doing several people's work at once is a bit of a recipe for disaster, especially when I'm rusty with the aircraft. So this is a refresher for me as well. And I always leave mistakes in. I don't see any value in showing people a perfect highlight reel of a flight, because then there's nothing to explain. When you do something wrong, it gives you a really good teaching moment, and sometimes I'm teaching myself at the same time. So it's, you know, sometimes it's discovery is going on, and the process of working through a problem is often more valuable than the problem not happening in the first place. This thing climbs like a crazy thing, doesn't it? We're going to be at 25,000 feet before we know it. It'd be interesting to look on the little nav map to see. I had a basic, yeah, look, it's done a really crazy steep climb out, and this was based on an Airbus performance profile. So this is wrong, this performance profile. Obviously the descent can be done a lot more steeply than that, because you can just use air brakes. I imagine this is a glide descent, but we'll see how we go. So basing our approach on the Navigraph chart here, we're going to come into silver, and then we need to be back down to flight level 150 at Woburn. Let's hide this out of the way for the moment, we don't need it. So we need to drop 10,000 feet, so we probably need Just looking at the range over here, 10 kilometres or 5 nautical miles. So just shortly before silver we should descend, I guess, to drop that 10,000 feet. So probably when we're over the top of Oxford would be an opportune time to do it. Got a little while yet though. We're just approaching, we're over the top of Ross-on-Wye at the moment. So is there any break in the cloud at the moment? Oh, there's a nice sunset going on. It's very pretty, isn't it? Lighting up the contrails. Very cool. So looking at the map, we are just passing... Now, where are we seeing behind us? That'd be Hereford that we could see over there, I imagine. So directly below us, just passing underneath us, was Ross-on-Wye is over there. It's often called Book-on-Wye. It's full of second-hand bookshops. And coming up is Gloucester. Gloucester's quite a big place. And Cheltenham is the one that's directly under our flight path over here, but this is Gloucester. So my dad's originally from Gloucester. If any of you have heard him on the channel, you'd have heard his very distinctive accent. I think we'll wind time back when we get close to the approach for Luton, because it's quite an interesting time to show, isn't it? Let's move this out to 80 knots. Oh my word, look at that. This is going to be cool, isn't it? We'll have to make sure, if we leave it on managed mode, it'd be interesting to see if it can make the turns, or if we need to go to selected speed mode and slow the plane down on purpose to make all of the turns. That's going to be an interesting one. But yeah, I haven't seen anything that complicated for a long time. So remember, we have to be down at 15,000 feet by Woburn. So we need to drop 10,000 feet. So we can do that, you know, with 20 miles to go until we get there. We'll have plenty of time to descend. So at the moment you can see managed mode's disappeared on the altitude because we're at 25,000 feet. So it's essentially entered altitude hold mode. If you've not seen the, while we're en route, just to keep ourselves busy, if you've not seen some of the stuff that's hidden away in this aeroplane, it's got some very cool tricks. If you go to the MCDU menu, go to ATSU and AOC, and do a weather request, for example, and it will be pre-programmed to get the weather for the airports we were at. If we send that request, so it's sent, saying enter destination data. That's because we haven't filled in any detailed data about the destination. So we can wait here for a moment. I think we get a message received that pops up in the display up here, I seem to remember. Can't remember exactly. We've got, oh yeah, there we go, company message has come in. So what we can do then is go back and then go to received messages, and there's a meta message, and there's the data for the weather at the departure and the destination airport. And here's the real party piece, you can print it out. So if you look round in the cockpit, the little printer has burst into life and it's printing out the METAR report onto a piece of paper. And if you then click on that once it's finished printing, it will move it across the dashboard and put it in front of the throttles for you. So you've got it to refer to on the way in. So you can see here 1019 is a QNH EGGW. So when we descend back down to 15,000, should we do that now so we haven't got any worry about doing it? So we need to be at 15,000. So we'll go managed mode. So you can see it's winding off the throttles and starting to descend. I can't remember in the Airbus if it gives you the green banana, so the the predicted range for the descent. I wonder if it's an option somewhere to do it.
Welcome to flight deck, ladies and gentlemen. As you may have noticed, we have begun our initial descent down to our destination.
We never actually took the seatbelt sign off, did we? We left it on, so we're not going to worry too much about that.
If you are up, once you return to your seat, we ask that you remain seated until your aircraft arrives safely at the gate. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for arrival.
Okay. It may be that we're not going to descend in time, you know. We'll see. We're still 30 miles out from Woburn. So if you're looking at this and you've only started watching halfway through on the internet, on YouTube, and you're thinking, well, my A320 in Flight Simulator doesn't do half this stuff, how come it's so different? This is the FlyByWire A320. So if you go and search for FlyByWire A320 on the internet, you will find this add-on. It has a really nice installer program, the FlyByWire installer, which manages looking after it and installing it into the simulator for you. So you can see I've got the stable version and it just manages it. So if there is an update, it just comes up with an update icon and it will look after managing and installing it completely for you. The same program also looks after the Salty 747 mod. It also looks after FSLTL, which injects aeroplanes into the airspace based on flight radar data, real world flight radar data. And also there's an A22X or an A220. It's not there yet, but yeah, there's lots of projects going on with the Fly-by-Wire team. It's open source, so let's have a look. Coming down to 18,000 feet. So we are aiming to be Woburn at 15,000, aren't we? So we're looking good. Only 3,000 away now. But once we get to Woburn, we then descend for 8,000 feet at Zagzo. There is a hold there. Obviously, in the real world, you would contact approach and they might put you into the hold to make you wait for other traffic in the area. Obviously, we're not going to need to do that. We'll go straight in. Well, I could show you how holds work, couldn't I? So it's all fully available in here to do holds. You just go into the flight plan. You select the waypoint where you want the hold to begin. So Zagzo in this case. So if we scroll through, we can select Zagzo and we can do a hold. And when you select hold, I'm not actually going to do it, but you can set the inbound course, the direction you're going to turn, and the time or distance for the hold, and it will inject it into the flight plan. And the aeroplane will then fly loops around that. The racetrack will appear on here when you do it, but we don't need to, so we're not going to. Okay, so we'll erase that, come back out, return. So we've just got the flight plan as it was. So we're at 15,000 feet, which is what we need to be at Woburn. Let's go and reduce the range on this so we can see a bit more detail now. This is cool, isn't it? Very, very cool. Be fascinating to see if the aeroplane can keep the turns. So we said about pulling the time back, didn't we? As well. So we get to see at least some of what's going on outside. Probably have a nice sunset going on behind us. Yes, we do. That's screenshot worthy, isn't it? That might end up being the cover of the YouTube video. Okay, making the turn towards Woburn, which you can see happening. It's interesting it's not quite rendered this correctly here. It probably thinks we can't make the turn because we're going too fast. So what we might have to do is reduce airspeed ourselves. Now, were there any airspeed restrictions going on? 220 knots. So 250, we need to be, 220 knots at Edcox. So that will shorten the radius for the turn. So as well as decelerating, we need to be descending. So once we get past Woburn, we will go for 8,000 feet. We can do it now. It won't actually do anything until we say to the aeroplane, go ahead, do it. Now, are those speed restrictions programmed in here? Yes, they are. So we should see the aeroplane slow itself down for Edcox. Because managed speed mode will take account of the speed restrictions. I mean, because it says because this aircraft is able to descend and follow the restrictions itself, we could set 0 as our target altitude. And as long as we're in managed mode, it will follow down and follow the restricted levels on the way in. So we're just coming up to Woburn. So this will be interesting, leaving it on managed speed mode to see it decelerate. So it's coming down to 250 knots. So it's already getting ready. So if you remember looking at the chart, it wants us max 250 knots at Woburn, so it's already managing it. It's very clever, isn't it? So we're just passing through Woburn. Then Edcox will light up as the next waypoint, and when it does so, we'll begin descending. There it goes. So we descend. So we'll say managed mode. So I click the bottom half then by accident, click the top half of the knob. It's managed mode, so we're pushing the knob towards the aeroplane, letting it manage the descent. So we should see the speed come off again when we get closer to Edcox. So at the moment the target airspeed is still 250 knots. I wonder how much leeway it will give itself to slow down. So the next thing we need to worry about after doing the descent is once we go through 6,000 feet, we need to go and program the barometric pressure. So if we just go and refresh our memory, it's actually on the printout, isn't it? So the barometric pressure is 1019 for the destination airfield. Winds at the airfield 300 degrees, oh no, so 30 degrees, 3 knots. So they're coming in from north east, 3 knots. I think you'd call it north-northeast, wouldn't you? 30 degrees. So this actually looks like it is going to make the turn now, but oh, maybe not. It's not quite rendering it correctly. It'd be interesting to see if that neatens itself up as we get closer. You often see small rendering errors like this in the fly-by-wire Airbus, so it may be the case we go selected heading mode at that point. In which case we could get the heading bug in the right direction immediately, just in case we have to do it. So we'll do it at an offset, so when we're halfway around the corner we'll go to heading mode. So I set it to 90 degrees and we'll just be ready with it in case we need to take over what the aeroplane thinks it's doing. So here goes the deceleration, it's doing it, look, it's coming down to 220 knots. If we zoom in again now, getting closer and closer to the destination. Yeah, it's that rendering issue has disappeared, look. Because the speed is changing. So it's able to make the radius much more easily, I imagine. Yeah, it's smoothing out, look, as the aircraft slows down. Very cool. So then the descent rate will now increase again, because we've now reached, so it favoured decelerating over descending. So we should find as well, if we go and have a double check now, we'll go and look at the approach plate for the airfield, ILS 254 degrees 10915. Let's go and look on the navigation radio. 10915, 254 degrees, it's all programmed in already. It's one of the wonders of the Airbus. We don't have to program the navigation radios for ILS. So it's worth pointing out, since taking off I've not touched the controls. The last thing I did was rotate. And I guess I flew the first few miles as we were climbing out before I let the autopilot take over. So what do we need to be thinking about? We're just descending. Speed is already done. We're coming down towards 6,000 feet, at which point is our transition altitude. This weather looks a bit scary, doesn't it? I will admit I've not flown into Luton from this plan before. This is all new to me. But then most flight plans tend to be new to me because I very rarely do the same plan twice. It's quite funny. I quite often take part in group flights with a group on the internet called MyAir. And the first sight I ever get of their plan is usually 20 minutes before takeoff when I'm programming it into the aeroplane. To the point at which I often can't remember where we're actually flying, and I'll be talking to ATC during the flight, halfway through a sentence, and I'll have completely forgotten where we're going. Hopefully they don't see it as disrespect. It's just that I'm usually trying to do more than a few things at once, like washing up and clearing up and getting in the sim up and running on an evening and juggling spinning plates. So we're at 8,000 feet already. So let's go and refresh our memory looking at the approach plate here. So 8,000, after we get through the 8,000 feet mark at Zagzo, we can, or we only need to worry about ILS itself. So looking here, I'm just trying to see if we've got much more information on this. So airfield elevation is 500 feet. 7.7, so they want 3,000 feet. Yeah, that's because it's 500, so they want 3,000 feet when you make your final turn in. So we need to descend for 3,000 after we get through the 8,000, but we want to do it in quite a sedate manner, I guess. So we're getting a lovely view across the southeast of the UK now. So as we make this turn, yeah, we're turning towards, if you look on the map, I can point this out, turning slowly towards London. So as we come in, you should see London in the distance directly in front of us. Oh, I think it's going to be obscured. Oh, that's a shame. So here's Zagzo, where we could have done the hold, but we're not going to. Okay, so let's have a look back at the flight plan. So this has got some restrictions. So it's going to go 6,000 feet at GWN 30 and then 5,000. and then 5,000. So let's try what we said. Let's just put in 0, or 500 feet, wasn't it? So if we switch this to hundreds. Actually, we want to be at 3,000 as a final, don't we? That would make sense. So we'll tell the autopilot then, okay, get us down to 3,000 feet. But it should do a step descent now, because we click the top half of the altitude knob. So you can see here it's descending. Or it's about to, hopefully. Maybe it's only going to descend when it has to. We'll wait and see. So let's go and have another quick look at the approach. So we're just coming through here. Yeah, I don't think we've got a chart for that specific transition. The zigzag. Or maybe we have. Yes, there it is. Oh, it's not exactly the same. But it has got the 6,000. Yeah, that's interesting. It's not exactly the same, so we don't have the exact chart for this sequence of waypoints, which is a shame, really. Oh, that's for runway 7, though. We want this one, don't we? There it is. Hurrah, we found it. God, if I had a brain, I'd be dangerous, wouldn't I? Okay, so what, 6,000, 5,000. Yeah, that all makes sense now. And then 3,000 for Fit Me. Brilliant. So we finally have something to go on. And there's some items of interest like masts and things to be aware of on the way. So I don't have the We Love VFR add-on, otherwise we would see that mast come whistling past. So we're descending. So it is doing what we asked it to do. So it's going to get GWN 30 at 6,000 feet, hopefully. It's just coming down to 7,000 on approach to it. So should we zoom in again and get a 10-mile range on this now? We're below 10,000 feet, so landing lights can come on. Again, we're late with that. This is busy talking and looking at 10 things at once. We're about to come down to 6,000 feet, at which point we will switch over to, what did we say it was, 1019 on the QNH, yes. So 6,400 feet and descending. On the approach. It's all looking good. So on the way in, we'll switch on approach mode. And we'll switch on both autopilots, and we'll start laughing at that point because it will probably do a full auto land. So we just double check the ILS at the airport. It'll be on this one, won't it? Is it Cat 3? Does it tell us? Yes, Cat 2-3. Awesome. So it can do the full auto land. I love the detail that they've gone to with the requested and actuals on the thrust gauges. It's very cool. It's easily making these turns, isn't it, at 220 knots? It's not a concern at all. There's the airfield coming. Just make another couple of turns. So we're going to start deploying flaps. So we've gone to the first stage of flaps. So they are travelling. Have a look outside. Very pretty. So we have come down to 6,000 feet now, so we can come back off of standard to 1019, wasn't it? And that is synchronized. We don't have to do it independently. I think that's an option in the aircraft, in the EFB, whether things are synchronized or not. So speed is coming down to 180 now, so when we slow down a little bit more, we'll go to the next stage of flaps. As soon as we get to kind of, it's going for 185, isn't it? So we'll go to flaps 2 when that happens. I'm not sure what the limits are. Again, if you did this by the book and you knew the aircraft inside out, you would know what the limits are. So we're going to go, there we go, we're fine. So we're now at flaps 2. You can see the nose is dropping as we get more lift from the flaps deploying. The aircraft is dipping its nose to maintain the same altitude. And it's now descending all the way back to 120 knots, so I'm going to go flaps 3. So it's slowing all the way down. Getting ready for the turn to finals. It's going to be a really slow approach. I'm surprised it's automatically going so slowly. So remember, it's aiming to get to 3,000 feet as a minimum altitude for its descent, which is the point at which we will enter the feathers for the ILS. So we may as well... Normally you wouldn't put the wheels out until you're on finals. So as soon as we make that final turn, I'll drop the undercarriage. And then we should be able to see ILS at the same point. So we'll switch the rose mode over to LS, or landing system. It is tempting to land it myself, just because I hate auto land with a vengeance. I can't see the point of having a flight simulator if you're not doing any flying, and so far I've done no flying. I want to give myself at least something to do. So if we turn this over to landing system, you can see there's the ILS marker. That's the glide slope. That's the course of the runway, and that's the horizontal. Well, the whole thing's an HSI, but that's the course deviation indicator that's just sweeping in gently. We're coming down towards 3,000 feet. We are below the glide slope at the moment. So we'll let it make the turn and then we'll take over, I guess. So it should start quite a steep right turn any moment. There it goes. Can't see the airfield yet. Is that one of the stadiums we're going to be passing over? It looks like it might be. I haven't really got time to look. Okay. Gear down. Oops. All the lights on. We could actually put the APU on, but we won't do that until we're landing. So we can see the glide slope is coming. So at this point I am going to switch off the autopilot, because I think it's tremendously boring. Go full flaps though, and we'll turn the auto throttle off as well.
2,500.
I'm just blipping the throttle to get an idea of where the throttle should be. Okay, so we're off to the right. There's obviously a crosswind going on here. There's a crosswind 6 knots from the right.
2,500.
which is why the aeroplane was off to that side. So we're watching here the small diamond here. Was turning gently left as well. We're trying to get the course deviation indicator. Yes. We need to descend down through anyway. We're going slightly high, which is fine.
2,500.
So let's descend back onto the glide slope. Should we zoom in slightly so you can see the numbers a bit easier? The trouble is we can't see the horizon if I zoom in. There we go. So the horizon's... Sorry, the glide slope is coming back to us. So we gently lift the nose and try and stay on the glide slope. Looks like we've judged the localizer just about right to stay on the centre line. Going a little bit high again. So it's wanting us to arm the spoilers again, which we will do. Okay, so it's just a case of counting the numbers down really as we come in. Coming down to 2,000 feet, a little bit below the glide slope, so we're just lifting the nose gently, keeping an eye on the airspeed. We're slowing down a bit too much, although we're still above the target airspeed, but I don't like going too slow. So with a bit of luck we're going slightly off to the left, so we'll just correct for that. 1,700 feet, and here's the runway right in front of us. Obviously we've got this crosswind we're dealing with, so you can see the runway coming out of the mist. The Airbus is so easy to fly, it's quite funny.
$1,000.
Bit high, so you can see the VASI lights now. It's worth pointing out, several of the professional pilots on YouTube have pointed out that the VASI lights and the ILS don't agree with each other in Flight Simulator, so don't get too hung up on them being perfect. It's especially apparent when you get close to the runway apron.
400.
So you're supposed to be 50 feet over the beginning of the runway, and then you're supposed to then plant the wheels on the target area if it's painted. So
300.
see, look, we're on the track on the VASI lights, but we're not on track
200.
with ILS. We're below the glide slope.
100.
It's very bizarre. Now it's saying we're too high even though we're lower.
50. 40. 30. 20. Retard. Retard.
That stutter was at just the wrong moment, wasn't it? So we can go reverses. Get back on the centre line. That stutter really threw me. So don't use reverses anymore below about 80 knots. Use the wheel brakes. And we're going to go long. We're not going to make that turn, so we're not going to worry about it. A bit off the centre line, so it wasn't my best landing ever, but it was amazing, wasn't it? That stutter on approach really threw me, and I became distracted looking at the VASI lights versus the ILS. Just shows you even the smallest distraction can kind of amplify over the course of a few seconds, and before you know it you can get yourself into trouble. I mean, okay, we were never in trouble, we just didn't do the prettiest landing we might have wished to. So this is the payware Luton airport that I bought a little while ago. It's very cool, isn't it? Especially seeing it at night with all the twinkly lights in the car parks. It'd be good to see what the terminals look like at night. Okay, so on the taxi back we can turn off the landing lights, we can put the nose wheel back to taxi, we can turn the where is it? I'm looking for the strobes, put them back on auto. Whoa! Go into the grass. This is the problem, trying to do everything at once. So we've now got to apologise to the ground crew about why we've got mud all over the tyres. This is where flight simulators become completely unrealistic, because you've got one person doing the job of 2 or 3. Also, on the way in, we would be turning on the APU and restarting it in case we don't have external power available. So again, need several pairs of hands at once. I'm just having a nosy around the airfield, to be honest. We'll run over a truck. I think they're magnetised to the aeroplanes, aren't they, the vehicles? I have a death wish as soon as I see an aeroplane nearby. I'm just happy being nosy looking around the airfield, to be honest. It's very well modelled, isn't it? I have no idea how accurate it is, it just looks good. So we'll go just past these buildings here and then park around the back of here somewhere. Just because it looks nice. A bit of a dip down. And whoa, bumpy piece of taxiway. Yeah, these are nice terminals here. Let's go in here. Obviously in the real world you get told where to park and you get told the route to go. Something that the A320 or the FlyByWire A320 does simulate really nicely is the delay in selecting a nose wheel steering direction and then the nose wheel steering matching that request. Okay, so parking brake is on. So this is the A320, so we've got the APU up and running already. We can just go and kill the engines. And engines will wind down. Oh look, Sim's frozen for a moment there. The engines will wind down and the APU will take over fully automatically. So obviously we don't have external power, but I think we can take care of that on the tablet. So we come and look in here, we can go services. We can say, yeah, give us a ground power unit, and there he is. He's magically appeared, driving through the middle of a van. Let's say, can we have the jet bridge here? Was there one? There wasn't one, was there? Oh, it's going to put the truck on. Very good. Should we get the fuel truck? Let's get everything. Why not? Catering truck. Safety cones. Why wouldn't you let us have safety cones? Got the parking brake on. Engines are off. Maybe when the trucks are nearby it doesn't bother with the safety cones. Presumably the doors will operate on their own. We'll find out in a moment, won't we? Yeah, they've opened on their own. Look. Very cool. So then the baggage loader is just coming around as well. Okay, so overhead, I guess we would, if I can remember the keyboard combinations to get there, we're going to turn the fuel pumps back off. We will go and turn the cruise supply back off. We'll go and turn the IRS system back off. We'll go and turn the logo lights off, turn the beacon light off, and turn the taxi light off. Whoops. And dome can come back to dim. The Emergency exit lights can go back to off. No smoking can go to off, and the seatbelt signs can go to off, and then you hear bedlam behind us. And then once you really want to power the aircraft down, you could just turn the APU off. We could remove the auxiliary power unit, and then we can just turn the batteries off. And the airplane will go dark very quickly. He says, as it doesn't. It will probably take the APU a little while to shut. There we go. So Flight Sim shows you that dialogue when you power everything down. We're still getting lights around the place from the fuel truck, I guess. So there you go. That's the A320 from FlyByWire. I think it's fantastic, and it's free. It's probably one of the best aircraft in the game. It's okay, it hasn't got the system's fidelity of things like the Phoenix, but it's very, very good. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there, and I'll see you all again soon. Take care.